everyone. Today I have with me author Ryan White, and Ryan's new book is about Jimmy Buffett. And I'm going to try to not get a glare on this, but thank you so much for talking to me today. I loved this book, Ryan.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for asking me to do this.
Oh my goodness. As I was reading it, I'm not a huge Jimmy Buffett fan. I have to say first, I love him, but I'm not a parrot head. Okay, I'm not that extreme. But I love history, and so I love reading biographies. And you did it perfectly for me, as a history buff, and then loving, Jimmy. I loved what you did with it. I love when authors take history. I didn't just get a Jimmy Buffett book. I got a book about the history of, I'm older than you. So, I remember the 70s, and I felt like I was reliving them through what you were telling me. And I loved that.
Thank you. That is nice to hear, because it was always a book that was bigger than just Jimmy Buffett. And I'm kind of like you. I would not self-identify as a parrot head. I've been going to see Jimmy since 1994. And then there was also a big sweep of time where I didn't go to any shows. But I think he is – I have tremendous respect for a lot of the work that he's done. I think he's one of the great characters of pop culture of the last 40 years. And I don't know that he gets his due. But I always kind of wanted to explore, the starting point for me was Margaritaville, and how do you successfully navigate 40 years of American culture, which is almost impossible to do.
I listened to it 100 times while I was reading your book, okay?
I have, doing radio interviews for this thing, I've heard the first 7 seconds of Margaritaville about 100 times coming in and out of radio interviews. But and he was, one of the things that makes him so interesting to me is he was there for all of these fantastic moments and movements, and really that in that first burst of kind of rock and roll, and you see it through people in the book like Michael Utley, who was part of, he was playing on Aretha Records, he was playing, with Bill, his first real gig was with the Bill Black Combo, who'd been Elvis's bass player. I mean, everything kind of is packed in there, and because they're coming out of the South around Elvis. Norbert Putnam, who produced Changes in Latitude, Changes in Attitudes, there's a fantastic story that he told me. We were sitting in a wine bar in Florence, Alabama. There were two things that came up. One, he was talking about all the people that he's played with, and Ray Charles comes on the stereo, and I said, "Did you ever play with Ray?" He goes, "I did hee-haw with Ray." And
wow.
I was like, "Do tell." But he also told the story, and this is in the book, about when he was first learning to play bass, trying to work his way through those very the earliest Elvis on Records songs, and telling Elvis about that one day when, Norbert went on to play on, I think, his 121 Elvis songs, including that amazing bass line at the beginning of Promised Land.
Mm-hmm.
He told Elvis that he'd learned how to play bass by playing along with Elvis songs, and Elvis goes, "Well, that's easy. That's just 3 chords. If you'd have started with Sinatra, you'd have never made it out the first verse." And so, Jimmy was part of that. He ended up part of that early Austin scene, and was working right alongside Nashville, as kind of Nashville and Austin were kind of these twin fronts trying to knock down corporate Nashville. And so all of that kind of had to fit into this book if you want to get to where Margaritaville becomes a success and then takes off from there. And that was, to me, that was so much fun to dig into that stuff. And the connections were a blast to pull out. And, my wife told me this morning, she's only about halfway through the book finally. And she told me this morning, she goes, "I wasn't sure why Ray Wylie Hubbard was there. But then a few pages later, I was like, oh, that's why Ray Wylie Hubbard's there." I was like, there's a reason. There's a reason these people are in it.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm older than you. I'm 52. And I was shocked at how young you were, because I remember it. I remember when Margaritaville came out, and I remember thinking, well, it came out and it was kind of like, well, that's a good song. And then it kind of grew, and then it was on the radio. I remember the radio days, and it was on the radio. And then it became a song that everybody knew. Of course you knew that song. Yeah. It grew from this cute song to a song that, of course, it became an anthem. And I lived in Florida for a little while. I lived in West Palm Beach, and I have to say that was probably my most exposure back in the '90s to understanding who Jimmy Buffett was, because everybody in Florida is like so crazy about him, especially at that time. But I recently, in 2010, I was in Dallas, and I check into this hotel, and it's packed. And there are these people with these tropical shirts on and these things. And I said to the lady, I'm like, what is going on? She's like, Jimmy Buffett's in town. I'm like, oh no. That hotel, I have to tell you that at that point, everybody was older than me, and I couldn't get a decent night's sleep because those people partied from the time they got there until the weekend was over and they left. Like, it wasn't about the concert. This is not about the concert. This is bigger than him in a way, you know, like everybody escapes through him, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Mike Utley says it in the book, and, you know, Mike is, aside from Jimmy, Mike's the only guy to play on every Buffett record since 1973. He's currently, musical director in the Coral Reefer Band. He's been working on the musical that just opened. When Mike and I talked, he was in New York to kind of consult on the music for the musical. And, you know, he said that, you know, management hates it when he says this, but they're really background music to other people's parties. I remember... I got to say, it was probably 2002 or 2003. I was still a sports writer, and, you know, I was the sports writer that they would send on the road for 3 weeks at a time because I didn't have any kind of a real life or anything, and that was fun to me back then, and just collect airline miles and Marriott points. But I took a little break to go down to Vegas, and Buffett just happened to be in town, so I got some tickets, and I had a bunch of miles, so I flew one of my best friends from college into Vegas for the weekend on my miles so that we could hang out and catch up. And I remember walking through the MGM and just like marveling at the colors of the party and the parrot heads, while simultaneously there was some kind of a goth convention in town. So you had this contrast of all of these people that were just pale white and black hiding from the Vegas sun, and then all of these parrot heads in their Hawaiian shirts and their coconut bras. And I was just waiting to see like one goth spontaneously combust from the color.
And their hats, the hats they wear.
Yeah. Yeah, and I remember this got taken out of the book because the book began when I sold it. When Touchstone bought it, it was the first-person travel narrative where I was going to like wander the modern Margaritaville and see if you could see where it came from. And as more and more people sat down and talked with me, their stories were way more interesting than mine. And so we changed the structure of the book. But I went down to Vegas for because now there's the Margaritaville Casino in the Flamingo. And so the Flamingo hosts this giant pool party before Buffett shows. So I flew down for one of those, and I remember I was going to go take a nap because I'd gotten up really early. I was old enough at that point that I didn't have the late Friday night flight to Vegas in me because I just didn't want to be on a plane with that many wrecked people. And so I got up really early and I flew in and I hung out for a while, and then I wanted to get a quick nap in before the show. And I remember there were two guys in coconut in grass skirts and coconut bras, and a woman standing there next to me as the doors were just shutting on the elevator, and this really sunburned arm stuck his fist through to catch it and stop it. And he kind of swayed into the elevator, and he looked at the three obvious parrot heads in the elevator. He goes, "You guys been margariting?" And I was like, "I've never heard that as a verb. That is fantastic." And so, yeah, I mean, it is a big party. And I think, you know, one of the things that I wanted to get at in the book, though, is people mistake that party for like just being a bunch of people who wish that they were burnouts. And one of the things I write is that one of the interesting job descriptions, or the appealing, I guess, job descriptions of burnout is that it takes no work whatsoever. Anybody could be one if they wanted. And these aren't people who want to be burnouts. These are people who just want a break because life is hectic and life is chaotic and life can be hard. And, you know, we all have responsibilities. But I did not, working on this book, meet a single person who wanted to, you know, miss their kid's soccer game in exchange for a meth high. They just wanted a drink and a quiet moment.
Yeah. And I read A Pirate Looks at 50. I think that's the name of it. That was, somebody gave it to me and I read it and I was shocked. I remember being like, you know, seeing the Jimmy Buffett who's out there and I was shocked at his internal struggles, his, the things that he went through. And I was like, wow, he's, this is a smart guy. This isn't some stupid guy who picks up a guitar and like, he's a smart guy. He'd have to be. I mean, you can't look at what he's made and not think that he is highly intelligent, and that he, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. Finish.
No, and then now even older, now that I'm in my 50s, I look at his stuff and think, God, what a marketing genius before marketing was a thing,
Yeah, I mean, he has had an innate understanding of himself throughout the entire sweep of his story in ways that nobody else could ever figure out. I mean, in those early days in Nashville, they couldn't figure out, they couldn't see any other way to break an artist other than radio. And they didn't think that they could get him on the radio. And they were right, largely. They couldn't get him on the radio. It was kind of, Margaritaville, it was kind of like he snuck through the fence and then all the radio programmers went and found the hole and patched it up before he could get back in again. But he has always understood who he was, and he's had the drive, to do it. I found an ad for a month, I think it was in February or March, a Monday at noon in the student union at a university in Hammond, Indiana in like 1974. That's not a glamour gig. That's a working musician's get to this one and get to the next town gig. And he did thousands of those. Mm-hmm. We forget the work. When somebody's been famous for so long and successful for so long, you forget the work that went into making that happen. And he is, as you said, he is very smart. And Norbert Putnam talked about how, Jimmy's best stuff has always been his journalistic stuff. The book gets its title from He Went to Paris, which was basically written about a cleanup guy at one of the old folk clubs in Chicago who really had been, in the Abraham Lincoln Brigade in the Spanish Civil War and would sit there after the club closed. He was a one-armed piano player and sweep-up guy and poet, and he would tell these stories. Margaritaville comes largely from, real-life events. And, had music not worked out for him, he had that little bit of journalism background, he would have been, a fantastic travel writer or just straight-up journalist. I mean, he has the innate curiosity, the willingness to go out after the story, and the writing chops, and, to put it all together. I mean, he could have done any number of things. He just finally had his hit.
Yeah, and, when I showed you before, when I read this book, I read that after I had read A Pirate Looks at 50, okay, because I thought he was a great writer. And the novel writing, halfway through the book, I was like, I could take it or leave it. And then all of a sudden it kicks in. And I was like, oh, okay, like this is a good book. But I haven't read any of his other novels, but he is a novelist. I mean, it did pick up and it did ended very, it was a great book. I remember at the end going, I got to recommend this book, but I didn't know who to, it had to be somebody who actually loved books the way I do. But he could have just done that. Yeah. And he could have been semi-successful with that. He could have just been a writer and, that would have been it. But it's also his personality. I was watching in preparation for this, I was watching some of his interviews and, you see him and you're attracted to him. Like, his persona is so like, everything's great. Everything's fine. Everything, it's like, that's what we want to see,
Yeah, and he's always had that star thing, talking to people who have known him from the very, very beginning. He's always had that kind of megawatt smile and that thing that attracts, that just some people have that attracts you to them even before they're celebrities, there are people who change the dynamic of a room when they walk into it. And sometimes it's because we've known them for so long. Sometimes it's because, they're in the news. Back in my sports writing days, I remember walking into a Kinko's in Detroit with Joey Harrington, who was the rookie quarterback at the time, and you could literally hear the air come out of everybody in the places they recognized him. And I went, and I met Springsteen once, and it was like, he changes a room. You're very much aware that Bruce Springsteen is in the room, and he is very much aware that it's his job to make you feel slightly more comfortable about that. When he saw me, recognize him across the room, he didn't it was a night off from his tour. He didn't shirk or try and, hey, how you doing? And so, Jimmy has always, one of the reasons he got on so well in Key West when he got there in 71 was because he was a happy guy. He was a good drunk, as they say, and there were bad drunks down there. There were definite
Right.
bad drunks down there. And he was a guy who just had more and more fun until he fell asleep finally. And so he fit in well. And Mac McAnally, who's been playing with him for 25 years or so now, Mac told me that he refers to what they do as a rolling ball of goodwill. It's just this, this happy thing that, from one town to the next, one year to the next, and that all comes from Jimmy. One of the old roadies told me a story that, Jimmy explained to him that, look, I don't care if you're having a bad day. I don't care if load-ins sucked. I don't care what's going on in your life. For 90 minutes to 2 hours, we are going to be the people that on stage and performing, we're going to be the people that they expect us to be, and we're going to do our job. And in that way, he and Springsteen have, people don't often talk about Jimmy Buffett and Bruce Springsteen together, but having written books about both of them now, they both know their role and they know why people come to them, and they they perform their role in kind of different ways, but I think the feeling at the end of the night is generally pretty similar.
Yeah, and when I saw that you wrote a book on Bruce Springsteen, I mean, now that's different. I was a huge Bruce Springsteen fan. I mean, I'm from Pennsylvania. I'm very close to Jersey. I mean, that growing up, I can't even. I saw that and I'm like, and I'm going to be talking to him about Jimmy Buffett. Man, I should have read that Bruce Springsteen book. But I will read your Bruce Springsteen
Well,
book.
it's coming out in softcover in October, so we can do another one of these and just talk Bruce.
Absolutely. We will talk Bruce. But, so I was looking at them and I'm thinking, okay, so you're, here you are, you're a journalist, you're a writer, you take these two guys, and who changed the 70s, who was the biggest part of the 70s in so many different ways, because Bruce was up in Jersey doing his thing, getting his crowd together. Jimmy's down in, the Keys, and he's doing completely different music styles, but both amazing songwriters. I mean, I can't even, both of them are when I was reading your book and reading the lyrics to, because I was and I was like, oh my God, I never appreciated Jimmy Buffett's writing, his songwriting and Bruce Springsteen. I mean, who can compare to Bruce Springsteen's writing? I mean,
the big difference is I don't think Jimmy has the inner turmoil that Bruce does. That even to this day, Jimmy's deal is kind of, Jimmy's got an eye on the horizon and he's looking for the next that, he can fly his jet, or in the old days, get his rental car or train or whatever mode of transportation he was abusing in 1972, 73, 74. So he doesn't have that inner turmoil. And I was talking with somebody about this the other night. Bruce is kind of like, come here, we share this pain and we're going to work out together. Jimmy is like, come here, we're going to forget all of this stuff for a couple of hours.
That's awesome.
But the end result, you feel better regardless. And what a fantastic gift to be able to carry through the world.
Yeah, I have a cute story about Bruce, but not really. My mom lived in West Palm Beach, Jupiter area, right? And she always went to this one club every weekend, okay? And she always talked about this guy named Clarence that played the sax that she was really good friends with. I am not kidding. My mom was only 17 years older than me, so she should have known, but she didn't, because she was just not, paying attention to music that much. And but she'd always tell me about him, and she'd say, "Oh, Clarence was in. We went drinking with Clarence." Then, finally one day she was like, "Yeah, Clarence knows Bruce Springsteen." I'm like, okay. I'm like, what is his name? She's like, oh, Clarence Clemens. He knows Bruce Springsteen. I'm like, Mom, of course he knows. It was the funniest thing. I tell people that all the time. It was just the craziest. He knows Bruce Springsteen. Really?
Yep. They met.
Just a little bit.
It was a dark and stormy night, as the story goes.
But yeah, that's always my funny, story about Bruce Springsteen. But anyway, I love that you did the both of them. I think it's amazing, and I want to know, what are you doing? What are you doing now?
promoting this thing.
When these books come out,
I'm promoting Jimmy Buffett, a good life all the way. I am. It's been a very, very crazy, blessedly couple of weeks since the book came out, and so I'm really just doing that. In February, I worked for the Oregonian newspaper here in Portland for 16 years, and which is just long enough for a newspaper job to do what newspaper jobs do. It went away out from underneath me in 2013, and so I did the Springsteen book. I did the Buffett book, which was always sitting in the back of my head, and kind of arrived at a time like I tell people that it's a book about change, and it arrived at a time where I was being forced to reckon with some real changes. The only thing that I'd ever wanted to do in my life was write for newspapers, and I got to do it for a long time, and then it went away. And so I got to do these, and in part, kind of through working on this, kind of made my peace with some things. There's a quote. It was Chris Robinson lived below Jimmy in the 70s on Waddell Street, the kind of the famous apartment in Key West that Hunter Thompson eventually moved into, kind of sublet from Jimmy for a while, and stuff. And Chris is this fantastic character who is a fishing guide up on Sugarloaf Key now, and he came down to Key West, and we had lunch on the beach, and we were talking about how much Key West had changed in the since he got down there in February '72. And he said, yeah, he goes, it's changed. He goes, but, I still like coming here. He goes, and for a whole new set of kids, in spite of all of that change, they come down from the Midwest, and it's Margaritaville to them. It's this place unlike anything that they've ever seen before. He goes, and then I try to remember that when I got here in '72, the old timers pulled me aside and said, well, you're 10 years too late. Should have been here 10 years ago. Because, so we have this tendency, I think, to always feel like we're somewhat out of time, or we've somewhat missed the good times. And so, kind of with that in mind, a firm that does advertising and stuff here in town offered me a copywriting job back in February. And I went, I kind of put my wife and my daughter through quite a lot as I was being a writer. And so I kind of owed us some sanity. And so I'm learning how to be an advertising copywriter. I have 2 or 3 book ideas that I'm going to get going on in the near future. I know my agent would like me to make a decision on that soon, but we'll move forward on that, and I'll figure it out. But it's been really fun for the last couple of weeks to just kind of exhale and not have to worry about my mortgage payment next month because I have this other job now. I mean, it was if I hadn't taken that job, the last bit of advance money would have saved us, for another 2 months, and then I would have had to scramble on a freelance thing again. And I know a lot of people who do that, and I will forever be impressed by the people who pull that off because it wore me out, and I needed a break. So I'm going to do another book. I hope.
I hope so too. I hope so too.
It was so much fun, and it was so rewarding, and it felt like somebody asked me the other day how you start doing a book about somebody as big and as famous as Jimmy Buffett, and as a story is wide ranging as Margaritaville is you were so kind to say, with all of the history that's packed into it. And I said, it's no different from when I first stepped foot in the Oregonian at the Oregonian in 1997 covering high school sports. You pick up the phone and you make a phone call, and then you make another one, and then you make another one. The only difference is instead of at the end of the day, you've got to write a story. At the end of 2 years, I had to write a story. So,
yeah, that's what I was thinking when I was reading this. I was like, I know research is a little bit easier today than it ever was, ever has been, but still just to put those pieces together, to weave the history in, it takes talent, and to be able to write it that it's interesting, that takes a lot of talent. And that's what I wanted to, be able to share with you, is that that's why I loved it so much, because it was so amazing. And okay, 2 more things. One thing is, what did you learn about him that shocked you? Anything?
I don't think anything that shocked me. I found some things that really illuminated him, for me, like the Deborah McCall, who was the first, kind of the first referette, her talking about his ability to, even in the craziest moments in the 70s, step aside and make sure, business was being taken care of. And that, he always had the ability to move within whatever, circle he needed to move in. If it was the business circle, he had the ability to do that. If it was the rock circle, he had the ability to do that. When he moved to Aspen and started hanging out with all the celebrities and stuff, he was perfectly comfortable there. Like he's, one of the reasons why there are so many groups of people throughout this book is that he moves through so many different circles. Like it's impossible to not collect people, and to be able to kind of keep your mind through all of that, I think was really interesting. One of my favorite things was, that I found, and I mean, you were talking about the reporting. One collects really weird things when you do this. Like, this is the stack of trademark paperwork, the case file for the trademark lawsuit with the Mexican restaurant Chi-Chi's, which had the Margaritaville trademark. This is one of my favorite. One of my favorite things, which is the script to one of the many scripts to the Margaritaville movie that never got made. But what's interesting about this, and this was kind of going through this, and I'll read you just a cover page. He wrote this draft with Terry McDonald, the magazine editor, who he founded Outside Magazine and hired Jimmy and sent Tom Corcoran. And Tom, fantastic novelist, great resource on this book, to Antigua in '78 for Race Week to write about that. And like directly from that comes, the Sail Off to Antigua line in Fins. And Tom, who co-wrote that song, had scraps of lyrics in his duffel bag on the boat as they were working on this magazine thing. And he just kind of pulled them out. I was like, handed it to Jimmy, like, oh yeah, I wrote these. And, a couple of months later, they're in Montserrat, and Tom shows up, and Jimmy's like, "Oh, I want you to hear this," and he played him the finished Fins. But so this was 1987, and it was Margaritaville, the movie, a love triangle adrift in the Bermuda Triangle. The synopsis: Margaritaville is about two guys from different worlds who become great buddies as they 1. Travel, meeting various eccentrics; 2. Resolve their comic love triangle with a beautiful girl; and 3. Save the island of Margaritaville and the way of life it symbolizes from the forces of greed and hypocrisy. And what was interesting about the script, which bears, at that point he'd been working on a movie for 4 or 5 years, and it bears all the markings of something that has been, written and rewritten and had probably too many hands on it. But you could see the beginning of him trying to build the world of Margaritaville, to take all of the other characters that he created and kind of populate one place with them. And I think when I think about your question and kind of the sweep of things, is how much, again, work. And it's not, most people who are fans of Jimmy Buffett understand that he is not just the layabout that popular culture thinks that he is. Right. There are kind of two extremes for people who don't really follow him. They either think that he's a complete stoner layabout, or these days a total corporate hack. And neither of those are true at all. He still cares very much about songwriting and writing and art. Sometimes applied in different ways, or in ways that some people don't like. But he's been doing this for 50 years. Anybody who does anything for more than a day is liable to create something that somebody doesn't like. And but how long it took him and how much work it took to kind of find the voice. Yes. And that even when you're really talented and have all the time in the world and the resources to work on it, you still have to put in the work, because the characters that are in that, I mean, the smuggler, the two male characters, one's a smuggler, one's a cowboy. They sent the script to Robert Redford and Harrison Ford. It was like, give me a smuggler and a cowboy. But the smuggler's named Frank Bama, who eventually found his place in the Where's Joe Merchant novel. And the cowboy in the script is Frank Delaney, but he becomes Tully Mars in Tales from Margaritaville and A Salty Piece of Land. And so the way that these things worked around in his head, and he stuck with them for a long time until he figured out how to correctly use them and apply them, I think is really interesting and really a good lesson for anybody who works on anything.
Yeah, I think that his story, for anybody who's out there and trying to market, like I said, like he did marketing before marketing, before marketing was a thing, really.
The internet, before the record industry understood the internet. Yes. He was ahead of people on so many things.
Yeah.
I hope people might recognize a little bit of that through this book.
Absolutely. Okay, so I hear you are a hockey fan.
Yeah. I grew up playing. I grew up in Michigan. That was my sport. So
Well, last night, I am a huge Pittsburgh Penguins fan. Huge.
I got a friend that you would get along great with. She and I did not see eye to eye during those Red Wings Penguins finals of years ago.
Because not recently, but so I was up till midnight last night watching a double overtime.
Yeah.
And we are now in the playoffs, and I will be there Monday. I will be in
nice.
Pittsburgh at the game. I'm so excited. But I saw that you were hockey. I was like, there aren't that many, in the world of sports, and you're a sports writer. Hockey isn't like the most popular sport. We kind of have to stick together. Hockey people have to stick together because, we got the NBA finals coming up. We've got, football's bigger. Baseball, I don't know about baseball, but hockey's smaller.
Basketball town out here. It's impossible to go into a bar and try and get somebody to put a hockey game on.
I know, you're like, can I have a hockey? Can you watch the hockey game? And they're like, what? Especially during, any kind of NBA thing going on. You can't get, you're like, but it's the NBA semifinals. I'm like, yeah, but the Penguins are in.
Yeah, I'm in pain.
It was a very fun night, and I'm glad it turned out the way it did, but it was very stressful, and I'm very tired, but, it all worked out.
Overtime playoff hockey is the best thing on this planet.
Two overtimes.
I know.
They were skating very slow, let me tell you. That second overtime, they were changing every 15 seconds, and they were skating slow.
Like me and my beer league game, but just because we none of us have any wind and we're all old men. So
when I first started watching hockey, it was during the Flyers reign back in the 70s. My dad was a huge Flyers fan. So we actually got off from school the day that the Flyers won back in 75. So it would have been 74, 75. And
everybody celebratory fights just for the Broad Street Bullies.
It was crazy, but that's when I first started getting into it. But now the Penguins are they're the team that they're the team to root for. But we got to play Nashville now, and who knows?
I never liked Nashville as a Wings guy, but I really came to get to know and like the city of Nashville and people in it while I was working on this book.
Yeah,
and so it's fun to see them very excited for it.
So are you saying you're going to be rooting for Nashville, or?
No, I'm actually going to enjoy just watching a Stanley Cup final where I don't care at all.
Right. Well, I'm stressing out. Last night I was like, by the second overtime, you're like, I don't even care anymore. You're like, I'm over it. I don't even care. And then they win. You're like, okay, I'm back.
Yeah. No, it's playoff hockey will wear on even the people on their couch.
Yeah. Exactly.
So.
Exactly. So anyway, it was really fun to get to know you. I can't wait to see what you're going to do next because, so far you picked two pretty good guys to, research and fun guys.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, I have all of these very, cultural and artsy and good reasons that I wanted to do this Jimmy Buffett book. There's these big themes that I wanted to explore, and I wanted to tell the story of this song that is unlike any other song before, but I also just wanted to have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I was coming off being laid off from a job that I enjoyed. I just wanted to have some fun, and I got to live on a sailboat for a week in Key West, so
how bad can it be? And
yeah,
I love
good.
What a great cover. Just so everybody can see this.
Touchstone. Simon Schuster did a fantastic job with that.
Awesome. And I hope you're, if you're out there signing books, I hope it all goes really well for you. It's a great book. Thank you so much for taking the time to write it. It will be a classic for all those Jimmy Buffett people out there. So,
Oh, thank you for enjoying it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, so we will talk soon, I want to read Springsteen, so we can chat.
We'll do it in October.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, Ryan. Have a great day.
Yeah.
Yeah, bye.